Good morning, everyone. Hope you're all having a wonderful day today. Today, we're going to be taking a look at the Gideon Mediator, which is kind of a Swamp Fox Kraken derivative, which is kind of an Acro derivative, which is probably stolen from somebody else. Now, full disclosure on the Gideon Mediator is that they did send it out to me for free, and in fact, one of the guys who used to work at Swamp Fox, Mike, is now working at Gideon. I've met him a couple of times, and he's always coming up with the new stuff. So just know that I didn't pay for this optic, and there is somewhat of a relationship there. Now, if you're not familiar with Gideon optics and their namesake, Gideon is, of course, the biblical hero and the original quality over quantity story. Gideon Optics, on the other hand, is not that. Gideon Optics is one of a slew of companies getting into the budget optic game. A lot of them are just rebranding the same basic optic, maybe a few minor changes here or there, but essentially they're carbon copies of each other. And now getting into basics of the Gideon Mediator, this is of course a Acro footprint optic. Keep in mind though that to fit this on a pistol, you will need a MOS or RMR or whatever adapter that you have, but it needs to be double undercut. Some Acro adapters are only single undercut. However, the Gideon Mediator specifically requires a dual undercut. Now, I have several Acro adapters laying around. However, none of them fit the Gideon Mediator, so I was not able to use this on a handgun, so all of my testing was done on rifles and PCCs. Now, the body of the Mediator is made out of 7075 T6 aluminum, which is awesome. It's a very tough, durable material. And on top of that, these very small micro red dots tend to be very tough just by their design. Weight comes in at about 2.5 ounces, and for that size and weight, you're getting a window size of 16 millimeters. Now, 16 millimeters is pretty darn small. Not the smallest I've ever seen on a pistol optic, but pretty darn small, like most of these enclosed pistol optics. Now, the trade-off there is you are getting, of course, an enclosed pistol emitter and a very tough, durable body, and these bodies can withstand some serious punishment. Just know that that comes with the trade-off. The Mediator is available with either red or green illumination. As you see it here, this is of course the red version. The reticle itself is a 3 MOA center dot with a 38 MOA outer circle, though of course you can cycle through them to your heart's content. Realistically, for such a small window, I think the center dot is just the best option, and we'll get into another reason later on why that is doubly the best option on this specific optic. Now, battery life is rated at 50,000 hours, though that is probably at a medium setting in optimal conditions. Realistically, you're probably getting somewhere less than that. However, keep in mind that this optic does come with auto on, auto off technology. After 4 minutes, it will automatically turn off, and then it will automatically turn back on once it senses motion. In terms of our illumination, we have 8 daylight settings and 2 night vision settings, though keep in mind I have not tested the light transmission or the night vision settings. Illumination controls are on the left-hand side of the body. You have a plus button and a minus button, and using those you can also cycle through your reticle selection. Powering the reticle on the right-hand side of the body is a 2032 battery, and at this point the battery tray has taken a couple hits and is a little bit difficult to get on and off, but is still perfectly functional. Windage and elevation are protected and slightly recessed into the body, which is a nice touch. And on top of that, they have 1 MOA increments, and they do have very tactile and audible clicks, which again, for this style of optic, is not all that common, unfortunately. Parallax on the Mediator is rated at 33 yards, so that is where it is going to be the most true. And for a pistol, PCC, PDW-centric optic, I think that's perfectly fine. Price, if I haven't mentioned it already, is about $250, and that is with the included riser, not with a pistol adapter plate. You have to buy those separately, or more than likely have a few laying around already. And as I mentioned earlier, all of my testing was done with the included riser, which is of course Acro footprint. Its design is not all that confidence-inspiring. There's no recoil lugs on the bottom, and it just has one very small spindly screw to hold it to the rail. So in terms of rail design, it is very simplistic, though again, I think most people are probably wanting to put this on a pistol. Talking about the glass and image quality for just a minute, there is a slight amount of magnification with the Mediator, probably less than 5% or so, but it is noticeable. On top of that, if you move the optic around in front of your face, you will notice that the image is shifting and warping a little bit, which is kind of common with these very small windowed enclosed optics. Now, the glass quality itself, in terms of how it looks quite good. There is very little tint to the window whatsoever, which is again something nice to see. Glass quality looks fine, though again I haven't tested light transmission at this point. Now, the emitter quality is decent, and it does retain a consistent refresh rate throughout the illumination range, which is always nice. It's always annoying when you get into the lower illumination range and then your red dot refresh rate goes a little schizo. Now, one notable quirk about the reticle and emitter is that when you're using the full reticle, which is the 3 MOA center dot and the 38 MOA outer circle, the reticle does not get bright enough for full daylight use. It looks like it needs an extra 1 or even 2 settings. However, when you cycle to just the 3 MOA dot, for whatever reason, it is more than bright enough when just using the 3 MOA dot. So whatever circuitry is going on when you're using the full reticle, whatever power allotment they have is not quite enough. And so if you are going to use the full reticle, not only is it a little bit more crowded, but it also does not get quite as bright, which is why after the first 500 rounds or so, I switched to only using the 3 MOA center dot. Now, speaking of round count, I've actually had this optic for months and months at this point. I probably put over 1,000 rounds of 9mm and 5.56 through it. And after all that time using it, it is a perfectly acceptable dot that does hold 0, even if the mount is not that confidence inspiring. Now, I did do some rudimentary drop testing on the Gideon Mediator to see if it would hold 0, and after about 6 drops at this point, it did hold 0 perfectly fine. I didn't have any issues with a tremendous point of impact shift, though. Again, anytime you drop your rifle, you do want to check the 0 at your earliest convenience. Now, for $250, it technically represents a good value in the market, though I have personally kind of soured on this style of optic in general. I think for in between $200 and $300, you can just get a Holosun 407C or a 507C for about that same price category, and you're going to be getting a better optic in general with a better feature set as well. Now, if you're just have to have a enclosed pistol optic and you have to be sub $300 for whatever reason, this can fit that build. Though again, for me personally, after using a lot of these small micro enclosed emitter optics, they just have additional bulk and smaller windows and are a little bit harder to use. So if you can live with an open emitter, I think the Holosun series of optics are still pretty hard to beat for the money. So, with all of that out of the way, guys, let me know what you think of the Gideon Mediator red dot in the comments down below. And with all of that out of the way, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. I will see you in the next one. God bless.